Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Root to Reign, a resilient parenting podcast. As always, my name is Abby. I'm your host. I'm a parenting coach for mom of teens, and I myself am a mom in the messy middle of motherhood right alongside you. And I know I say this probably every episode. I was prepping for our episode today. I was like, man, I'm so excited for the topic that we are going to be addressing. As we're kind of talking this month about the root work, what's going on below the surface. And part of what we're going to be talking about today is values and value-driven parenting instead of reactive parenting. And like I said, I know I say this often, but it's like one of my favorite topics. If you couldn't tell, I'm kind of passionate and a little bit nerdy about these things because I just love when families are healthy and whole. And I love when moms are getting to parent from a place of not just confidence, but really feeling connected to their values, feeling connected to their families, their teens, feeling connected to themselves, instead of just second guessing and doubting and downplaying, right? That I really love it when moms feel like they are the expert parents, that they are the ones that know what they're doing, that they can go into their relationships with their children feeling like, hey, you know what? I might mess things up sometimes, but I'm here because I love you and I'm going to show up and I'm going to do my best. I love when moms get to finally get to that space. And I know we were talking last week about nervous system and our bodies. I know we've talked about mindset and we've talked about shame and guilt and all these things, and they all do tie in together. It's not just to overwhelm you with information. I do think everybody kind of has a different focus sometimes that they need to hear. And that's where I think about what we're talking about today with values being something that is so important. And I think, again, these topics are all important for everybody. It just kind of sometimes depends on the season that you're hearing it. You might be like, I really need to focus on what shame is telling me. I need to focus on nervous system regulation. But I will say, kind of across the board, something that I see is that values, and I know no surprise to you, but values are part of what makes up the way that we interact with the world. And so thinking about how that can apply to our parenting, it's kind of the foundation for some other concepts, for some other things that I have my clients practice, especially when we're talking about hint boundaries. Values is a really, really important foundation to have because it's what informs everything else. It lets us know why we're doing the things we're doing. If you don't value something and you're still doing it, then why are you doing it, right? And I think that's kind of the flip, is that oftentimes you will have a value, you have something that's really important to you, and you're not acting or responding from that place of your value system. You tend to react from a place outside your value system, and then that's where things like guilt and shame start to show up later on. And so thinking about getting really clear on our values, getting really clear on the why behind we're doing, the why behind the things we're doing, getting really clear on that and really having like a rhythm for our values, not just for your sake, because I think oftentimes we have an idea in our head of our values, of kind of our moral compass. But again, when push comes to shove, if we don't feel super clear on those things, that's where behaviors pop up that might not be quite aligned with how we're thinking and feeling and really what we value in this world. And then thinking about how that shows up in our parenting can be really conflicting and confusing for our teens. And this is not, blame or shame, but I will say a lot of times in the work that I have done and do with teens, one of the biggest complaints I hear is they do not feel like there is consistency from their parents. And understandably, in their teenage brains, it could be developmental pieces that they might not be able to see the whole picture. And that's not to, slam them. But I do realize we are working with brains that sometimes don't always see our intents, that don't always understand where we're coming from. But that also points out to me how important consistency really is for them then. And making sure it's not just consistency that we think we're doing, but really showing up consistently in a way that they can start to recognize the patterns, that they can see what you are doing. And so thinking about this idea of values and showing up consistently with those values is really going to help make parenting so much easier for you. And I wish I could be like, hey, here's the like magic wand or magic pill and like, voila, parenting has been hacked. You've got all the secrets. I know it's not that straightforward and simple, but I will say being consistent with your values is going to get you really far. And so thinking about why this gets me super excited, like very amped, is because when I start to talk about values with my clients, they start to really internalize like, oh, wow, these are the things I really do care about, but I've struggled to put them into words, or I haven't been acting in a way that really reflects those values. Here's the shifts that I need to make so that I get to show up in a way that does honor those values. So we are going to kind of talk through the first section here is the idea that like the noise in our world is so constant. That parenting today feels so loud. Like I was saying, I wish there was like a magic pill or a wand that I could wave and make it simple for you. There's not one. If anything, I think there's so many people that have solutions or ideas or theories. And I realize myself could be included in that, which is why I really try hard to focus on things that are research-based, things that really are clinically informed per my background, that it's not just, hey, here's what I was feeling about parenting and throw it out there. And that's not to say that that's what everybody does with parenting. But I do think that sometimes this noise that we're seeing is everybody is trying their own opinion, their own approach, and sometimes it can be really beneficial stuff. I know I love Dr. Dan Siegel's information and books and the writings that he has done, especially when it comes to understanding the teenage brain. And there are some other parenting theories or patterns or even just trends that have come and gone that I strongly disagree with and I don't find beneficial. And so that's where I want to pay attention to the noise that is getting thrown at you. I want to be mindful that I'm not just adding to that noise. And as a part of my work is I want to help you tune out the noise that is no longer helpful or sometimes is even harmful for you. Because sometimes these experts on Instagram or teachers at school or even like your mom's voice in your head are telling you 50 billion things to be doing. And that's not even just mentioning what's going on already in your own heart and mind. And then your teen comes in and maybe they're having mood swings, and that does not help when you're already in this headspace of trying to filter out information, take what's helpful, leave the rest, implement it all. And then they walk in and they have an attitude with you and are like, what the heck, mom, why'd you do that? It's like, I cannot, I do not know what I'm supposed to say or do or how to interact or how to not react. And so sometimes that's where we see like the silence and shutdown. That's where we see freezing. Some moms are like, you know what? F it, screw it all. Like, I'm going to lay into you because I'm over this. I think that's where sometimes moms are like, I feel so guilty and I just don't know what to say or do. And so do I need to go and apologize? Do I need to go fix it? And that's where I think sometimes too, this idea of our values start to look inconsistent because there's so much external noise that's going on that we're not actually tuning into what matters to us. And that's the other part too that I feel very strongly about. In fact, I was talking with someone this week about part of my philosophy. I guess this is where my opinion or feelings could kind of weigh in. But I really, truly believe that there's going to be a lot of really amazing frameworks that can help people. That a lot of the way I operate is kind of giving people that blueprint, giving people the structure. But ultimately, each and every mom and each and every one of her children are going to need different kinds of parenting. And so it's not a one size fits all. That's where I want to help you ultimately tune out that noise, because it might be telling you, you have to do this with your teen, and your teen doesn't respond well to that. Or it might be saying, here's what you have to do to be a good mom, how to blah, 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 fill in the noisy blank. But for you, it might not be the most beneficial. And so again, that's where I go back to your values are going to be so key, so important in how you show up in your parenting. So thinking about that idea too of like tuning out the noise, because you're trying to be consistent. But then what happens when the ground changes? Because everybody's like, oh no, there's this new style of parenting we have to tune into, and we have to do this, and we have to do that, and we have to get on board. And so you might feel calm, and then suddenly you're snapping because you're trying something that was recommended on your For You page on Instagram or the algorithm on Facebook. And you're like, this isn't working for me. And then you internalize that as like, what's wrong with me? When the reality is that information aligned with your values? If it's not, tune it out. So if you do find yourself snapping or second guessing or just like constantly doubting yourself, and you might even be asking like, am I doing this right? Is it too late to turn things around? What even matters anymore? Those are all the questions that I want to help address with you. And I think especially starting with that question of, oh my gosh, is it too late for me to turn things around? Abby, I don't know what my values are. I have not done a very good job of explaining it to my children, to my teens. And that's the other part too, is I realize I work with a whole array of moms. I have moms that have adult children and then teens. I have moms that have teens and tiny children. I have moms that just have teens. So I need you to hear this, that it is never too late. It's never too late. I realize you might have some more work to do if your teens are on the tail end and you have more adult children, but it's never too late to start now. So with that, that's part of where I want to talk about in this section, the idea of having clarity being more important than having control. Because that's where we're going to start to get to the root of these things. When we don't have clear values guiding us, we try to default to control, because control feels safer than uncertainty. But here is the thing that I want you to hear today and hold on to, is that you weren't meant to parent from fear. I would say that's parenting with some loose quotes around it, right? You were made to lead from alignment. That values-led parenting is going to tell us this is what matters most in our home. This is how we show up, even when it's hard. That it's not about perfection, and you'll hear me say that 1,000,002 times. That it's about having a system, really like working on that root system that holds steady when everything else feels chaotic. And again, that's where thinking about being really rooted in our values, being rooted in who we are and who we want to be is always, I know I always bring it back to that. It's just because it's literally the name of my podcast for good reason. But being rooted is really going to have a ripple effect into your tree rings, into your legacy, into your children's lives and their children's lives, and so on and so forth. And so I want to talk about what values-led parenting even looks like. What does this look like day in and day out? And that's not to say, oh, well, on Fridays I value respect, but on Mondays I value being heard. No, it just means you're going to hold the same values, and being a human being who is not going to get it perfect every time. There might be ebbs and flows, but the goal is we're going to be working towards consistency more often than not. We're going to work on showing up as often as we can day in and day out. And so thinking about, like I mentioned, I have some different frameworks that I like to use with my clients that oftentimes there's very similar themes, but then I like to really help hone in what each person needs. So with one of my frameworks is to help you clarify your values, and then even more, your family values, to make them livable, to really name what matters most. If your family is like, we value dinner together as a family, and that's something we really want to implement as much as we can, make sure that's a part of your family values. We'll talk about this even more too, but make sure everybody else knows that that's a family value too, right? So that's the idea of consistency, is I want you to first identify your values, but then I also want you to be able to share them with your family. So it's not just like, I don't want them to feel caught off guard because they're like, I'm learning, I'm growing. These are great things. And I love that. And it's easier to get everybody else on board if they know what those values are for you. So we're going to talk about even being able to share with everyone else. But I do want you to think about things that are beyond just like, oh, we just want to be kind, which is a great value. In fact, like there's a values worksheet I walk people through where there's all these different values that we have, where it's like zest of life, responsibility, togetherness, freedom, respect, generosity, education. Lots more that I won't walk you through the whole worksheet right now. But thinking about that's kind of like our bare bones for what are the values that we have. And then we start to plug it into how does this play out? So what specific qualities do you want your family to be known for? Maybe it's, hey, when we have a rupture, when we mess up, we also work on repair. Another value could be like, we don't shame one another. We do get curious. Another one could even be, and I know it might be hard depending on where you are parenting from and the kind of parenting you grew up with, but it could be, hey, we care more about connection than just simply compliance. And I realize when you have younger kids and sometimes you're just trying to get them on board with the idea of being obedient, you might take that approach a little bit. But ultimately, you want to help shape their heart behind why these values are important, not just to you, but to help influence why it's important to them too. That's why I do firmly believe, again, being able to talk to them about it. And it's not too late if you did not start when they were little because you're just like, I'm doing the best I can. But sometimes it can help when they are little and starting to instill those ideas and values into them and helping them understand the why. So that when they're teenagers, it's not just like, I need you to listen to me because I said so. It's more about, hey, we as a family really value and honor and respect one another. And being the parents, we do have a certain position of authority that is given to us from a place of wanting to make sure you are taken care of, that we are going to act in your best interest, that we have these things in place on purpose. And as a result, that's where we're asking for obedience on your end. So that's where it's not just about compliance, it's about that connection, it's about that understanding. And I do realize, like, as I'm talking about this, sometimes it sounds beautiful in theory, and then it feels so messy in practice because, let's be so for real, we're dealing with teenagers who really do like to push back, who really do try to push your buttons sometimes. So I'm not saying this is easy breezy, but I am saying it's part of the framework, part of the rhythm I want you to get into so that you can let them know, hey, and again, this is part of like boundaries work too. So it feels like a sneak peek, but helping them to understand why you have a boundary, where it's even coming from is because those are the values that are important to you. And this is also what I like to encourage as you're sharing your values with your teens is I want you to give them space to talk about what their values are. Kind of creating like a family value system, kind of creating family, I wouldn't say like rules necessarily, but almost just like, what is our family motto? I'm not thinking of the correct word right now, but I hope you're understanding the idea of basically like, what are the standards? What are the guides? What are the values that we have as a family? And then make it visible. So post it on the fridge, talk about it in the car, reference it during those hard conversations. Your teen can't follow what they can't see. Again, that's where I want you to be able to share your values with them so that they actually understand if they're violating a boundary or your value, that they can understand where it's coming from, why you're feeling frustrated. And then let your values lead your decisions. Again, I realize it's a little bit easier as we're talking about it. It can be a little bit harder to live it out. But if you say, hey, I really value respect, and I want to make sure that as a family, we are speaking respectfully towards one another, that does need to become part of your internal compass so that when your teen frustrates you, you're not just like, hey, you're a dumb idiot and I don't understand why in the world you ever thought that was a good idea. Right? Like that might be part of what you want to say. But if you're going back to your value of respectful conversation, and that's part of what you expect from them, make sure that you're reflecting it on your end too. Let your values lead your decisions and even your responses so that you're not just reacting. When your teen messes up, you don't need to panic. Just go back to your roots. Go back to that system of, in our home, we take responsibility and we repair. In our home, we care about how we treat each other, even when we disagree. This doesn't eliminate the conflict, but it gives you direction in the middle of it. So I do want to talk about, like I mentioned before, like when it does feel too late or when it even feels too messy. And you might be thinking or even saying out loud, like, well, I didn't do that. I've been reacting. I've been yelling. I've been giving consequences. I didn't follow through on XYZ. First of all, you are not alone. Okay? Nobody does this perfectly. I don't expect you to do it perfectly because I don't do it perfectly. Okay? But most of us were never taught how to lead with our value system, with that intention. A lot of times we were taught how to keep the peace. We were taught how to be compliant, no questions asked. But here's what I want you to hear. Here's what I want you to take away. If you only take away one thing from today, is that it is not too late to start. You can reroute your family, even in the middle of those messy seasons. And honestly, sometimes I think the messy seasons are the best time to reroute because you're like, this already feels chaotic. Let's just do everything from scratch. Let's just get a blank slate out. Let's try something new. Because that really encourages, that starts with you asking, hey, what values have been leading me lately? What values has been leading our family? And what values do I want to lead with moving forward? And that's where awareness in this is going to be one of the first steps to alignment. And I realized I use the word integrity a lot. And that's because it's this idea of like alignment. And you might, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're like watching the video version of this podcast, I also talk with my hands a lot. And so it's this idea of like, I bring my hands together when I'm talking about integrity, because in my mind, it's this idea of like being within alignment of what your values are, living within those values, really kind of like, it's almost like the core of who you are too, which again, with my tree rings analogy, that's part of like the core of the tree trunk, that I want you to be living within the alignment, within the value, within the integrity of your values. And that's where we have to become aware of what those even are so that we know what we're living within the alignment of. And so one simple practice I want to leave you with today is grab a sticky note. It could be a piece of paper, it could be a note card, but something that I want you to be able to see visibly. And I want you to fill in the blanks here of, in our home, we choose blank over blank. And if you're like, Abby, I don't have a blank over blank situation, that's okay. But I just want you to think about, in our home, we choose blank. In our home, we honor blank. In our home, we practice blank. And some of those examples could be, in our home, we choose connection over control. In our home, we choose repair over perfection. In our home, we choose curiosity over criticism. But I want you to post it somewhere where it's visible to you. And then let it remind you that your home isn't built by rules. It's really built by those rhythms of your values. That's not to say rules aren't important. Rules are important, but it's really the heart behind the rule. It's the heart behind where these rules come from. And it's from those values in your value system. And so every moment of misalignment in your home, in yourself, with your teen, it's also just an invitation to return to the root. So I want you to think about consistency doesn't mean control. It just means clarity. It helps you know, hey, I'm clear on my values so that I actually know what I'm supposed to be doing day in and day out. I know what is rooted, where I'm rooted in my parenting. And I realize that when you start your parenting journey, oftentimes you're just thrown into it and there are conversations that are had and there are things that you might do with intention. And sometimes you just get thrown into it and you're trying to catch your breath. And suddenly you're like, my kid is 13 years old and I don't know what I think about phones. I don't know what kind of boundaries I'm supposed to have there. I don't know what I think about dating or some of these different things because now I'm in it and now I have to think about it. And I feel like it's too late. Before we spiral there, again, it's never too late. It's about finding consistency so that you're not just operating and reacting to those situations from a place of control. You're really leading from a place of values and able to connect with them and explain to your teen, help them understand the why behind some of those rules. So if you couldn't tell, these are things that are all super exciting to me and also things that I'm just really passionate about because I think there's so much messaging around parenting and that, yes, like I said, some of it is really helpful, but I think some of it's really hurtful. And my hope and my intent is to really put them back in kind of like the driver's seat, to help you feel like you know what the heck you're doing, to help you know that your value system is what matters. You don't need to sit there and listen to 12 other people tell you about their parenting and how it's the best ever if it doesn't fit for you, if it doesn't align with your values, if you feel like you can't live within the integrity of the tips and tricks that are being thrown at you. So if you are craving more clarity around your values and how to even apply them day to day, I would love to invite you into the Rooted Parenting Circle. So this is my monthly community. It's a membership. It's month to month. You can cancel anytime. There's no blame, no shame. But I will say my intent is I'm going to be there every month. I want to help support you through all of these messy moments, through all the moments of confusion and chaos, and also just help you through all the messaging that's getting thrown at you in our very noisy world, that I want to help you be able to connect back with the kind of parent you want to be. I want to help connect you with other moms too, so that you can be reminded, hey, I'm not alone. We're all trying to figure out how to reparent ourselves so that we can parent from a healthy place. But this group, this membership is really, it's for emotionally invested moms who want to parent with calm, with connection, with confidence. So inside the circle, you're going to get monthly Q&A calls with me. So the burning questions that you're like, I don't know what to do about this. I don't even know what my values are. Can somebody help me? I want you to bring that. I want you to bring that to our Q&A calls. And then the second call that we're doing during the month, and this is every month, is we'll be doing a workshop or a training. And again, these are going to be topics sometimes like values and kind of doing a values workshop training. Some of the other ideas that I've had that I'm really excited about is sometimes more like the logistic pieces where it's like dating 101, how to support your teen, what to do when navigating body image when you yourself might be struggling and you're like, I'm perimenopausal or in the throes of menopause, and then my daughter is just now starting her cycle and everybody is feeling hormonal and we're not feeling great, and I'm supposed to help support her through her body image when I'm not feeling great in mine. So that's an idea of a workshop that we'll be working through, all kinds of other ideas that I have cooking as well. But I also want to hear from you and what would be most helpful, because this really is a community that's for you. I'm going to have weekly prompts for you, things that you can be thinking about to get these daily rhythms in. And then I'm also going to be giving you tools throughout the month. The weeks when we don't have calls, I think those are the weeks that I'll make sure that you have a tool specific either to the Q&A call, to the training, or something that the community is just expressing would be really helpful to have. Because again, I don't want to just be another voice. I don't want to add to the noise. I really want you to feel like what you are learning here is implementable. And sometimes too, the work that I do with moms is just reminding them of things. And so that's my hope, is to not give you a cookie cutter approach, but to really empower you in the kind of parent you are and would like to be. So it's going to be a supportive private community of moms walking through this with you. So whether you're listening to this before we launch or months from now when we're moving and grooving, you're always welcome to join. So You can learn more at my website, which is www.rootedinresiliencecollective.com. Short and sweet, I know. Or you can always DM me the word circle on Instagram or Facebook, and I will send more details over to you. So just really excited about being able to offer this. So sorry, I know you're going to be hearing about it for a little bit. If you're sick of hearing it, that's okay. Just let me know what other ways I can be supporting you. So all that to say is, as we're closing today, I really want to encourage you to be thinking and reflecting on what values you want to be parenting from. And if I might encourage, one of those values could be to remember that you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be